Hello, mathematicians. It's so nice to see you again. We are going to start a new math unit today. We have finished our time focusing on multiplication and division. Well done. We are going to move on to what we call algebraic equations, but you don't have to worry about that right now. First, we're going to do a math warm-up together. That's very familiar to you. Get out a paper and a pencil, pause, and then read, and then join when you're ready. Your question today is for closest estimate. 89 times 32. So is the closest estimate 300, 3,000, or 3,200? Now pause the video for 30 seconds, come up with your answer, don't write anything down, and then come back and join. Okay, welcome back. Now, when you look at these two problems, you know what I think. I hope you are reading my mind, which is turn these into easier numbers. 89 is so close to another comfy number and a landmark number of 90. And 32, for me, I see this close to 30. So when I think about this question, I actually think about it, sorry, I am not left-handed. I think about it as 90 times 30. 90 times 30. Well, 90 times 30, I don't know that, but I do know 9 times 3. 9 times 3 is 27, and then we add those two zeros back, which would make it to 2,700. Now, I made this number a little bigger, and I made this number a little smaller, and I got to 2,700. So I know 300 is super wrong. I'm going to cross it out. But then when I look between 3,000 and 3,200, I think about how when I change the numbers, I change one of them to be a little bigger and one of them to be a little smaller. And it's still considerably smaller than 3,000. So I don't think that 3,200 is closer to the real answer. So my estimate, my closest estimate is 3,000, and I hope you chose the same. Okay, now we're going to move on to something called penny jar situations. Now, it's sort of like when we were doing multiple towers. It's an example that helps us practice a skill. The multiple towers helped you practice multiplication and division. And these penny jar situations, which I'll get into in a minute, help you write a certain type of math equation. I want you to get used to learn how to do and get used to doing. So the way it goes is you imagine you have a jar. I'm going to use this. This is what I got. You imagine you have a jar. And when you have this jar, you imagine that you're putting the same, like each round, you're putting the same amount of an object in the jar. Now, in the example, it talks about putting pennies in a jar. But I'm at home and I don't have 100 pennies to demonstrate with. But you know what I do have? I have pasta. So we're going to call it the pasta jar situation or whatever you want to call it. But in your book, it'll say penny jar, and that's what it's referring to, is what I'm going to show you right now. So I want to show you, I'm going to say, what if I had a jar and I already had 4 pastas in the jar, okay, 4 bow ties. I'm just going to call them pastas, okay, and then every round I added the same amount of pastas. So let's say after one round, how many pastas would I have? Well, if I have 4 pastas and every round I add 6 more, so this is my first round, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So after one round, after round 1, I have 4 that I started with plus the 6. So I've got 10 altogether. So after one round, I would have 10 pasta. Now after 2 rounds, well, I'd add 6 more. So go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it'd be 4 that I started with plus the 2 rounds of 6. So 6 plus 6. How many would that be altogether? 4 plus 6 is 10, right? We knew that. Plus another 6 is 16. Okay, what if I asked you, how many pasta would you have after 3 rounds? Well, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, just dropped 1, get it later, 5, 6. So you could almost create an equation, right? You could say how 6 times your rounds, if it was 1 round, it's 6 times 1 plus the 4 you started with. That's 10. Let me show you with a different visual what I'm getting at. Actually, I want to turn the other way. You also could draw it like this. So if I began with 4 pennies, oh, I erased it by accident, but here I wrote pasta, that would be like my 4 pastas, right? And then imagine each of these rows is another round, okay? So this is round 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So after one round, you would have those 10 pastas, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. After 2 rounds, you'd have the 16. After 3 rounds, if you add 6 again, right, you'd have 22. After 4 rounds, you would have 28. And maybe you're starting to see a pattern of the way the numbers move. Yes? Starting to see a pattern. Well, you're going to be writing a situation that has a repeating pattern like this with an equation. But because I don't have pennies, I'm just using pasta, but it's the same idea, okay? So I want to put this in your book with you. I want you to practice this with me right now. So I want everybody to open up their books to page 501. Okay, that's 501. Pause the video and come back when you're ready. Okay, welcome back. So in that first situation, we're going to write down the information of the problem we just practiced together. Okay, I'm going to show you how I do it in my book. Okay, here we are on page 501. These are our penny jar amounts. Today, we can call it the pasta. Also, you don't have to change it. Do whatever you want. So we just talked about starting with 4 pennies or pastas and adding 6 pennies each round, or 6 pastas. How many pennies are in the jar after 6 rounds? Now you can represent this any way that makes sense to you, but I want you to figure out how many would it be after 6 rounds. So pause the video, see if you can figure it out, and press play when you're ready. Okay, welcome back. So this is how I would do it, which is only one way. So remember I had the 1, 2, 3, 4. I had the 4 on the first round, and it says 6 rounds. So I'm like, okay, I don't want to forget. So each round, so it's after 6 rounds, and it's 6 pennies each round. So I'm like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Now, I could count these one by one, but what I know is that there are 6 in each of these. So I can always go 6 plus 6. And then plus my 4 that I started with, and I can tally it up. If you got 40 pennies, you are correct, because 6 groups of 6 makes 36, plus 4 more is 40 pennies. So that is how many you have after 6 rounds. Now, typically in class, I would give you a different penny jar situation, but instead, I'm just going to tell you one that I have. Okay, mathematician, for number 2, we're all going to do the same penny jar situation. Imagine you're starting with 7 pennies or 7 pastas in the jar. And every round, every time you toss in more, you toss in 3. How many pennies would you have, or how many pastas would you have after 6 rounds? So remember up here, you saw me with my container. I had 4 pastas and I put 6 in each round. So the question would be like, after 3 rounds, how many have you had is all together? After 5 times of doing that, how many are there all together, right? But the actual question here is after 6. So I modeled with you 6, and now I want you to do 6 rounds again, so 6 times of this again, but instead of starting with 4, you're starting with 7, and then instead of adding 6 each time, you're going to be adding 3. So it'll be 3, and 3, and 3, and 3, and 3, plus 3, right? So your picture might look more like that on the rounds, okay? So everybody write down 7 and 3. Now turn the page to page 502. I'm going to give you 2 more situations. Now, one of them is a bonus one you can do, and one of them is required. So usually you'd pull one of these cards, but I can't hand you a card. So I'm just telling you what you're getting. You need to draw a picture or a diagram that shows the number of pennies in the jar after each round. Show us at least 6 rounds. So imagine like you've got your jar after 1 round, 2 rounds, 3 rounds, 4 rounds. Like here was my picture representation with the rounds. Maybe you have a different kind of picture, okay? But everybody needs to start with 12 pastas, add 4 each round. Tell me how many you have after 6 rounds. If you feel like a challenge, you can do this one where you start with none and you add 8 each round, okay? And that is all you have to do today. All right. So like I said, 7 and 3. And then this one is starting with 12, adding 4, and you have to draw a picture or a diagram. You have to show something that represents how you understand that. And then this is an extra one if you want. Okay, mathematicians, remember, you're just filling up a jar with pennies and you're adding the same amount each round. And we just want to know, like, what would the total be if you added the same amount 3 times or 6 times? Well, actually, they're asking you 6 times. So I just want you, if you need a visual, think about it like you're filling up your jar with pasta. You started with some already in it, and now you're adding the same amount every time. How many would you have after you did this? 6 times. If every time you put in 3, or every time you put in 5, okay? So it made me think too, if you need another representation that isn't like all of the circles like I did, when I was thinking about the beginning with 4 and adding each round, I thought of another way of showing it. I thought, what if I had like a jar like this? And maybe I had 4 already in there, right? Maybe I already had 4. Maybe this is my jar. And then maybe after 1 round, I added 6. Then after another, I added 6. And there's my groups of 6. I can even do them as dots. Do you see how my dots represent how much I have? There I've got the 4, and then I've got the 6 for every round. So this was round 1, how much I had. Then after round 2, I had all of that. And then after round 3, I kept putting in more, and this is how much I had. So my question is, how many would I have after 6 rounds? So 6 times of tossing in the same amount. And we figured out together that would be 40. All right, pastas, pennies, doesn't really matter, okay? But the idea is with repeated addition, how much would you have at a certain point, okay? If you have any questions, remember you can email me or Miss Karad, whoever your teacher is, okay? And you just have those 2 pages, 501 and 502. We are going to expect to see you showing your work with a picture or some numbers, all right? And also adding the correct numbers from the video. So pay special attention, all right? Remember, there's 2 for page 502, but the second one is a challenge choice, not required. Okay, if you have any questions, like I said, contact one of us. Good luck and have a wonderful day.